YouTube, what is going on? Theo Bean here. Today we are doing a Fire Emblem engage ring tier list. That sounds kind of redundant, but here we're gonna get into it. We have everything ranked from S through C. I don't think anything's worthy of D. Plus I changed the did it use because I just pretty much just threw all the DLC in there. So this is going to be the free-to-play group, right? I guess if you want to call it that. But we're going to go down the list and we're going to get to it. First up is Lyn. Lyn, in my opinion, is one of the best emblem rings, and she is going to go into S tier. And this is going to be for several reasons. One, her ability she grants a character that you put on. I ended up having her pretty much equipped to Ivy for the time being. Ivy was extremely strong when I had her equipped with her. When I had her equipped with Lyn's ring. And then then Ivy's ring ended up going on to Allcrest. And Allcrest became an absolute sniper archer god. But the reasons that Lyn is probably one of the best rings in the game is going to be, for one, Speed Taker, which boosts your speed, which also goes in line with Ultricity and Ultricity plus, which as you level her up, you get that. Speed Taker makes to the point where enemies you kill give you a speed boost. Ultricity makes it if you have a certain amount of speed level over your opponent, the likelihood of you to go attack twice before they can counter is even higher. So on somebody like Allcrest, who is a ranged sniper and who is really good with bows, he becomes this insane sniper tank. Have him early on kill off some weaker enemies, get the Ultricity and Speed Taker bonuses buffed, and then from there you can start pretty much one-shotting even the stronger enemies, except for tanky enemies that have high defense. Lyn's engage ability with the clones is insanely broken. The best part about it is actually using it almost in a defensive way by having somebody run forward, use her ability. This case, say you have somebody who's low health, you need to kind of protect them, you don't have the support resources to save them. If somebody has Lyn's engaged completely maxed or ready to go, have them go forward, use it in some of those 4 clones. During that enemy turn, they will almost always, I think this was pretty much like 99% of the time, there was one time it didn't work, but the enemies will prioritize the clones and won't go for your party members first. This came in so clutch so many times. It was incredible. That, and plus being able, her actual ability, I can't find the name of it. Anyways, her engaged attack lets you take enemies out from so far away. Also, one of her bows is extremely effective versus dragons. Taking out dragons during certain levels is extremely clutch, or being able to, if not one-shot them, put a massive chunk into them to the point where if you do engage with them, you can just take them out with one attack, is extremely clutch. Eord, even to take out really powerful mages, really powerful enemies from a distance, or just affecting the way that you go into a fight and just taking one of them down, especially the stronger enemies, or just weakening them, can be extremely useful. So she is an S tier for sure. Next up is going to be Ike. I think Ike is a fair B. I'm gonna put Ike in B for several reasons. One, his tank stats are extremely good and he can make somebody extremely tanky. Somebody that you don't want to die can be extremely good with Ike. Ike's ability is kind of best utilized exactly like how I said to use Lyn's clones. You want to have somebody go into enemy territory, use your engage attack, where you go into a defensive mode, have enemies swarm you. And then if you survive, which his abilities to help that, decreasing the damage you take as your health gets lower and lower, making you almost really hard to kill. The only things I found that could really kill somebody who were using Ike was somebody who used a magic attacks on them, because he does a higher defense, not as high resistance, and through link attacks, which would slowly hit 80% chance to do 4, 3, 2, 1 damage just based off of that. You really need to be able to be in the right spot in order to go in and use him, and he is fairly situational. but if used correctly, he can be extremely strong. I found early on, around the time when I first got him, he was very useful, and I found later on there weren't too many scenarios where I could really use him too effectively, since normally the characters you're going to equip him with aren't the most mobile, so moving him into the front lines can be a little bit tougher. Next up, we have Byleth. Now, Byleth is going to be S tier, just because of how insanely overpowered Goddess Dance is. I think that ability alone puts Byleth in S tier. What Goddess Dance does is, if you have somebody move to a certain spot using Goddess Dance, the characters that are in the cardinal positions of Byleth, meaning up, down, left, and right of that position, can go again. Completely renews them so they can go for a second time. This does require some strategy and setup, but you can have characters go as many as 3 times while using him and Yall together. Having somebody go, use Yall Dance, have them... Sorry, you can go up to 4 times with one character. You have, so for instance, you could have your Eirika attack, Yall dances, Eirika attacks again, then you have that character with Byleth who's Goddess Dance, that Byleth then have Eirika attack a 3rd time, and then you can have Yall dance for them again to have them go a 4th time. Granted, that is not exactly the easiest thing to do, but with this strategy, you can at least go 2 times with, or 3 times with the character, or if not, 2 times with the multiple characters. This can really completely change the tide of a fight or attack just with that alone, and as well as the teach ability. That's not what it's called, but the ability that lets you raise the stats of those around you can also be extremely clutch based off of who has Byleth equipped. For me, I ended up having Hortensia use Byleth most often, and having the ability to raise your party members' resistance was actually pretty helpful, especially considering most of my characters had higher defense and the resistance levels were lower on average for the rest of my team. So Byleth is S tier. I will put him there, and just because of how good Goddess Dance is, I think that's fair. Next up is going to be Sigurd. Sigurd, I am going to put into A tier. I think you can debate Sigurd being a S tier, but I think A is pretty safe for him. Momentum and the ability to completely annihilate enemies all lined up with one move can also change a battle completely on its head, especially if you're playing on hard or the more difficult, the harder difficulties, or if you're playing to the point where you're not on classic. If somebody dies, they're dead for good. So your decisions and moves you make can be the decisions and moves you make, you need to be very careful. With that, I think Sigurd is really strong, and that ability can really change things up. The amount of times you're going to just have enemies lined up for you, though, is pretty rare. Not very often do you have a wave of enemies just moving close to you. But with that said, I think he's still an extremely good unit. Giving a specific unit, whoever you want, with absurd mobility can be extremely good. I liked having a Sigurd on Eirika for a little bit. Since Eirika was my strongest unit I had in the game, having somebody that could just move from one end to the other instantly or in one turn really made Eirika just feel that much stronger. Especially the ability to gain momentum. Having them already be strong, just getting an added attack bonus just based off how many spaces you're moving, is extremely strong. So A for Sigurd for me. Next up is Micaiah. Micaiah is a pretty solid emblem. I think Micaiah probably belongs in B tier. I was never in a situation where I was really getting fucked too often. Micaiah's sacrifice ability, I believe that's what it's called, something like that, um, can be extremely useful to just use only one character, have them sacrifice all their HP or close to it to max everybody's health that's in the vicinity. The range for this ability is massive, and there's not too many maps where your teams are going to be split and you're not going to be make the most use out of it. But for your teams that are grouped, say you're getting your ass kicked, this can really come in clutch to make sure all your other units that are in play can be on the offensive. Only one character is needed in order to use the support, heal everybody up. That said, her offensive abilities and things like that weren't too crazy to me. Tune precision can be really nice skill to have somebody learn, especially somebody like Lynn, Celine. Having that extra accuracy on a tomb is pretty nice, but I don't think that's any sort of reason to move her up. I think B is the right spot for Micaiah. I'm gonna put Celica in the A tier. I think that's probably where she best fits. Orb Ragnarok's a really strong ability. You can have ideally your tomb user, because her entire kit really buffs people that use tombs, especially with the magic buffs. The echo ability, things like that. Echo actually kind of felt useless to me. I really never used it. Holy Stance was really nice as well, and the recover could be useful, but that wasn't until you got her maxed out. But Warp Ragnarok was pretty useful due to the fact that you could have later on in the game when you get more situations, your teams are split up into two groups, have whoever is using Celica on one side kind of clearing one group of mobs out. Then you could have her use Warp Ragnarok to kind of rejoin the other group, kind of help clear them out, giving you the flexibility to kind of cover large distances on a map in an offensive way. Next up is Roy. Roy, for me, is going to go into the C tier. Roy's kit was pretty niche for me. His ability itself wasn't the best. It could be used in chokes to kind of slow down enemies if they're trying to advance and you're trying to buy time. Those situations are pretty rare, and I didn't really find too much of a use for it. Roy can grant a strength bonus, but it's not... Outside of that, I feel like he really doesn't have much to offer. Whoever's equipped with them, the holdout ability can come in clutch. But ideally you want to have somebody with a lot of HP to kind of make the most of that ability, since what that does is based off certain HP thresholds, 50%, 20%. It is actually set at 30%, 20%, and 2 HP is the different levels for holdout, holdout plus, and holdout plus plus. Those really, I maybe had twice where I had to use that. Outside of that, it really wasn't that great. I think he probably, in my opinion, is the weakest emblem in the game. I really didn't feel like I probably used him the least, and he was probably the hardest to get SP with, just because of how niche his ability is. Using it at times just felt like you're just using it. It wasn't really necessary or needed. Next up is Corrin. Corrin can do a lot of different things. Corrin is interesting, right? Because Corrin's strength is just based off who's equipped with her. I ended up having Corrin equipped onto Yunaka later in the game, and I feel like that's the character that she best fit with. With somebody like Yunaka, her environmental ability is that she makes a shroud around them. And of course, Yunaka's ability is that when she is in cover or has a increased evasion, her crit rate also goes up. So you could just constantly have a higher crit rate with somebody like Yunaka if they're utilizing Corrin. This was extremely useful and did actually help with a ton of different situations. Yunaka could create this more offensive entry type of character where you could go in, drop a smoke screen, increase her evasion, and use her ability to attack from at least 2 range to kind of poison enemies, as well as possibly even one-shot them with her heightened chance to crit. Outside of that, her actual attack damage wise is pretty weak, but having the ability to, what's it called, having the ability to increase her terrain, having the ability to change terrain, as well as just having the dreadful aura ability, which was if you initiate combat, you can pretty much prevent the enemy from moving for 1 turn, was extremely strong. And I feel like that's probably the next best part of her kit. That, as well as the fact that she does give HP, and the HP buffs are pretty significant: 5, 7, 10, 12, and 15, based off how much SP you spend for those, was extremely nice buff, especially since HP is the best stat for defense in general, because it increases the amount of health you have, which kind of is good for both your defense or resistance, right? It just, no matter what, just increases how much health you have to lose. So I think she belongs in A. This can change just based off of who you have her on. Having her on the right unit can make a big difference. Next up is Eirika. Eirika is interesting. I believe it's pronounced Eirika. But Eirika and her brother, Ephraim is his name. I cannot remember it. He almost never gets talked about. They were interesting because early on, I felt they were just kind of meh. I had them equipped to Rosado throughout my entire playthrough. But once Rosado was maxed level 20, bond with Eirika and Ephraim, Rosado became an absolute monster. With this emblem ring, Rosado actually won player of the game multiple times. That's how strong he became. The ability to just not only, the best part of, I think, Eirika is the fact that when you use your engage ability, your weapons that you get access to are the best part. You have the wind sword, which was extremely strong in doing increased damage to flying units. You had the passive dodge gain. You had all these skills that came with them, which is pretty insane. You had the lunar brace and the solar brace based off whether you could change between Eirika and Ephraim. Eclipse brace, which was for the lunar, gave you more damage based off your defensive stat, and the solar brace made it so that if you attacked, you could regain health based off a percentage of the damage that you do. The rapier was extremely strong. You had the rapier, you had the lance proficiency, which was also great on Rosado, using some spears, and you also had the best weapon in my opinion, which was the sledge lined. That's probably fucked up the pronunciation of that. But with that weapon, I would constantly use her ability, which was the dual strike. Would almost one-shot any sort of enemy, especially corrupted. The dragons, I could run up with Rosado's increased range, one-shot them, and make quick work of them. I'm gonna put Rosado here at the second spot of tier A. Just the amount that Eirika, sorry, I said Rosado, I meant Eirika. Just the amount of perks that you get with this ring is extremely nice, even though those do kind of take a time to add up, and as you increase that bond, you get access to more of those skills. But once you're in that 15 to 20 range, this ring really starts to shine. It becomes extremely strong. So I think A is the right place for them. Next up is Leif. Leif is probably also, in my opinion, an A tier. Leif kind of operates the exact same way that Eirika does, where you just want to engage your character, and when that character is equipped, whenever you get attacked, you will automatically, before that enemy attacks you, will switch to the best weapon to use against them. This was by far, in my opinion, the best part of Leif's ring. Quadruple hit could also be extremely strong in various situations. I ended up having Leif equipped with Tamara throughout my playthrough. Tamara's Sandstorm ability, along with Leif's quadruple hit, was extremely strong. Sandstorm would do damage and bypass their defensive stat. Having one of those proc on Leif's ability, which hit 4 times, was really nice and would often just mean whatever damage it's telling you you're going to do, you would actually do more than that based off RNG, right, and how often Sandstorm would proc. Most of the time it procced at least once, at a couple of times it procced twice, and a few times where it procced 0 times. But having an entry unit or somebody that can go in like Tamara with Leif equipped is going to always maximize the amount of damage they do based off how many units are attacking you. Whether you could use somebody like that offensively, attack with the best weapon for that, and you wouldn't have to worry about having them equipped to a different weapon because Leif's passive skill would do that for you, which was extremely proficient. I did think it was kind of weird that you got knife precision with Leif. That's best going to be used for Vel'Koz or Unica, but I don't think those units really should be using Leif. Someone such as Tamara or Diamant are going to be the best units for him. These characters that can use multiple weapons, ranged variety of weapons, something like a Rider's Bane, a crit item, ranged item, some sort of variety in the amount of weapons that they have really makes the use out of that passive ability from Leif. So with that, I'm going to put him in A. I think that is a good spot for him. Next up is Lucina. Lucina is kind of weird. I'm going to put Lucina in B, and I am totally okay if people disagree with me. But here's why. I ended up having Lucina on Yall for the majority of my playthrough because that was the person she kind of best fit with. Gave him dex, which he could use. But I felt that I didn't really have the best unit for somebody like Lucina to use. I know there's other units that really mesh well with her. I weren't using any of those during my playthrough. So I can understand that somebody might have gotten better use out of her compared to when I did it. Lucina is a pretty good emblem overall. The sync ability, what is it called? Her sync ability attack, which has multiple enemies attack, I was never found a good opportunity to use it to its full advantage. When done properly, you can have pretty much everybody do a joint attack on one enemy, which can be extremely strong. That does require some setup in order to do, though. I found having same thing with Eirika and Leif, having her engage and then using her noble, what is it called? Sorry, having her use her bonded shield was probably the best use for her. So I could have Celica on occasions where I needed somebody to frontline and I needed him to tank. I had a situation where I had Diamant and Tamara frontlining, and then I had Celica behind them in bonded shield. Bonded shield along with Leif is extremely strong. You get Leif's counter ability to attacks, all while being bonded by somebody like Celica, who has already a high dex, gets an increase in dex from Lucina, becomes even stronger. Kind of using that support emblem to help strengthen the powers of another one was extremely strong. That got me through 2 turns of surviving waves of enemies, and it was actually insane. I couldn't believe it. The synergy that those two had together, specifically between Leif and Lucina, was extremely good. I think her weapons are kind of mid, and her bow agility at the cost of crit wasn't really worth using for me, in my opinion, on somebody like Sigurd or Allcrest, so I didn't really utilize that. I kept on Seedall for that dex bonus, and like I said, that support since he is always grouped up in team next to people. Last up is Marth. Marth is, unsurprisingly, as everybody should expect, an S tier and probably the best emblem in the entire game. When you equip Marth on your strongest melee unit, you become an absolute powerhouse of a monster. I ended up having him on Eirika pretty much as long as I possibly could, just because of how strong he was. The ability to hit 3 times gives you insane avoidance, so even on somebody like, in my case, Eirika, who is my strongest unit, giving them passive avoidance, making them harder to hit, also giving them a boost to other stats. Sword agility further increases their avoidance. They became an evasion tank. Somebody that you can run in the front line, already has speed to outspeed everybody. It just becomes an absolute monster of a unit and just further makes those strongest character even stronger. Also, his ability to just hit anybody 9 times, regardless how much damage, is pretty insane. Tanks or bosses will just get absolutely chunked, or you can single-handedly take out one of their health bars with that move alone. His weapons, in my opinion, were solid, not better than using the liberation I found overall, but granted, on somebody else, if you're not using them on Eirika specifically, will still be extremely strong, even with those weapons, even though that's not exactly stronger than liberation. But Marth, overall incredible unit, high offense and defensive buffs to whichever character you have them equipped. Like I said, equip them on your strongest melee character and you're bound to tear your enemies to shreds. So with that is going to be the tier list. I think this is honestly pretty fair. All the emblem rings are honestly extremely good, especially the more rings that you unlock through melding for them just makes them even stronger, all those passive stats. And the emblem rings you equip on a character will also just multiply how strong that character is, so always put them on the best units, and figuring out the synergies really does kind of make or break these units as well. With that said, I did actually really love the emblem ring engage ability. I thought it was really good, and how it worked with battle was really nice. It gives it more replay value by going through the game and trying different rings on different characters, or trying rings on characters you didn't even use before is, I think, a cool way to kind of go through the game again. But I love how all the characters do really feel special when you engage, in that it really does feel like when you're engaged, you are like on another level compared to before. So, but with that, that's going to be it. I think my list is honestly pretty fair. Let me know down below in the comments if you disagree, what you agree with, what you disagree with. I'd love to hear it. But I think honestly it's pretty fair. So that's going to be it. Thank you guys for watching. As always, like the video, subscribe, leave a comment down below, like I just said. And I hope to see you guys in the next one. Peace. Deuces. See ya.